The baby shower was a confection of pastel pinks and blues, a cloud of sugar and happy chatter. Balloons, shaped like sleeping moons and smiling stars, bobbed against the ceiling of my parents' sun-drenched living room. I sat in the ridiculously ornate wicker throne my mother had rented, a mountain of presents at my feet, my hands resting on the taut drum of my belly where my twins, Noah and Chloe, kicked and tumbled. I was 32 weeks pregnant, round and radiant, and, for the first time in a long time, unequivocally happy. My sister, Clara, was a shadow lurking at the edge of the light. While everyone else cooed over booties and debated the merits of different diaper brands, she stood by the mimosa bar, her smile a thin, brittle line. She was 2 years older than me, and the space between us had grown from a simple age gap to a chasm filled with her silent, simmering resentments. Her journey had been a brutal one, a decade of failed IVF treatments, 2 devastating late-term miscarriages, and a marriage that had crumbled under the weight of it all. I had tried to be there, to offer a shoulder, but my every attempt was met with a flinch, as if my touch burned. My pregnancy, especially with twins, was not a joy we could share. In her eyes, it was the ultimate theft. "Time for the cake," my mom chirped, her voice pulling me from my thoughts. It was a magnificent cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece decorated with tiny, edible baby blocks and sleeping lambs. Clara was handed the cake knife, a long, serrated silver thing with a handle wrapped in white ribbon. It was meant to be a gesture of inclusion, my mother's clumsy attempt at bridging the divide. Clara took the knife. Her knuckles were white. She walked past the cake, her eyes fixed not on the confection but on me. The laughter in the room trickled into an uneasy silence as she approached my throne. "Clara, honey, the cake is over here," my mom said, a nervous laugh fluttering in her throat. Clara didn't hear her. She stopped directly in front of me, so close I could see the tiny, broken blood vessels in her eyes. She raised the knife. Not playfully, not for a photo op. She raised it slowly, deliberately, until the tip, smeared with a tiny bit of frosting, was pointed directly at the apex of my belly. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. My husband, Liam, started to move from across the room, his face a mask of disbelief turning to fury. "This is my day," Clara screamed, her voice cracking, raw and guttural. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated anguish. Spittle flew from her lips. My own voice was a whisper. My hands, which had been caressing my belly, were now a shield. "Clara, calm down. Please." Her face contorted. The polite mask she wore for the world shattered, revealing the snarling, wounded animal beneath. "Calm down," she hissed, leaning in closer. The knife trembled. "You stole my life. You stole my babies." I just stared at her. The world narrowed to the point of that silver knife, the madness in her eyes, and the frantic, panicked drumming of my own heart. I could feel Noah and Chloe stir inside me, as if they, too, sensed the danger. Liam was there then, his hand clamping down on Clara's wrist, prying the knife from her grasp with a sickening clatter as it hit the floor. My father was pulling a hysterical Clara away, her body limp one moment, thrashing the next. My mother was just standing there, her hand over her mouth, her face ashen. The party was over. The balloons seemed to mock us, festive and joyful in a room thick with horror. That was 9 months ago. The 9 months that followed were a slow-motion descent into paranoia and isolation. We filed a police report, but they were hesitant. "A family dispute," the officer called it, handing us a pamphlet for a mediator. Liam, enraged, pushed for a restraining order. The legal process was a fresh hell, forcing us to detail Clara's history of instability, her obsessive texts, her veiled threats. It felt like a betrayal, even after the knife. It was the final, formal severing of a bond one had once cherished. My parents were caught in the middle, their denial a fortress. "She's just hurting Maya," my mother would plead over the phone. "She didn't mean it. You know how she gets. Don't do this to her. Don't do this to our family." Our family? What was left of it? The restraining order was granted, a 100-yard paper shield that felt flimsy and useless against the depth of Clara's delusion. We moved. We didn't tell my parents our new address, only a P.O. box. Liam installed a state-of-the-art security system with cameras covering every angle of our modest suburban house. I stopped posting on social media. My life, once an open book, became a locked room. The twins were born on a cold October morning, healthy and screaming and perfect. Noah had my dark hair, and Chloe had Liam's blue eyes. Holding them, I felt a love so fierce it was a physical ache. But it was a love tainted with fear. Every creak of the floorboards at night sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Every unfamiliar car that slowed on our street made my breath catch. Clara became a ghost in our lives. We heard through a cousin that she had gone away for a while to get better. My parents were vague, their voices strained. But the haunting continued in subtle ways. A baby gift, a single, exquisitely detailed wooden rocking horse, arrived at Liam's office with no return address. How did she know his work address? Then, an anonymous email with a link to a blog post about SIDS. It was psychological warfare, designed to shred my already frayed nerves. I saw her everywhere. A flash of her auburn hair in a crowd at the grocery store, a car identical to hers parked 2 streets over. I was living in a prison of my own making, the walls built of love for my children and terror of my sister. Liam was my rock. He checked the cameras obsessively, screened every call, and held me when I woke up from nightmares of a silver knife and my sister's screaming face. He never once said, "I told you so." He just held the line, protecting our new, fragile family. Then, last week, the phone rang. It was an unknown number, but Liam answered it, his voice instantly cautious. I watched his face as he listened, saw it drain of all color. He sank onto the sofa, the phone still pressed to his ear. "Yes, I understand," he finally said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "We'll be right there." He hung up. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a fresh, raw horror I hadn't seen since the baby shower. "That was Detective Miller," he said. "With the county police. They found something." The storage facility was a bleak, industrial place on the forgotten edge of town. Rows and rows of identical, corrugated steel doors baked in the afternoon sun. Detective Miller, a man with tired eyes and a kind, weary face, met us at the entrance. "Mr. and Mrs. Evans, I'm sorry to have to bring you here," he said, his voice gentle. The unit manager reported a tenant for suspicious activity, visiting at all hours of the night, sometimes just sitting in her car outside the unit for hours. When she missed a payment, they cut the lock, as is their policy. They called us immediately. He led us down a long, echoing corridor to Unit 237. The metal door was rolled up, revealing a gaping black square. A uniformed officer stood guard. "We need you to confirm if you recognize anything," Miller said, shining a heavy-duty flashlight into the darkness. "Brace yourselves." I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. The beam of light cut through the stale, musty air and landed on a scene of such meticulous, breathtaking madness that I had to grab Liam's arm to keep from collapsing. It was a nursery. A fully furnished nursery, assembled in the cold, concrete confines of a 10 by 20-foot storage unit. There were 2 cribs, identical white ones with rounded edges. They were the exact same model I had bookmarked on a registry I'd made and then deleted months ago. In each crib, the bedding was neatly turned down, a small, stuffed animal placed on the pillow, a lamb in one, a bear in the other. A rocking chair sat in the corner, a hand-knitted blanket draped over its arm. A changing table stood against a far wall, complete with diapers, wipes, and jars of cream, all arranged in perfect, symmetrical rows. A mobile with pastel-colored planets dangled from the ceiling, turning ever so slightly in the faint draft. It was a perfect replica of a dream nursery, a dollhouse created by a fractured mind. It was loving and tender in its detail and utterly, bone-chillingly terrifying in its context. "Oh my God," Liam breathed, his arm tightening around me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the wall behind the cribs. The cold, gray cinder block had been painted a soft, pale yellow. And on that yellow wall, in elegant, looping cursive, were two names, painted in sky blue and baby pink. Noah, Chloe. My breath left my body in a ragged sob. It was a sound of pure agony. This wasn't a fantasy. This was a plan. This was a destination. This was the room she had prepared for my babies, the room she intended to bring them to after she had taken them. The single rocking horse, the anonymous emails, they weren't just harassment. They were preparations. They were promises. We found her prints all over everything, Detective Miller said softly. Clara Jennings. Is that your sister? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. I stared at the names on the wall. My baby's names. How could she have known? We had never announced them publicly. I searched my memory, my mind racing through a fog of fear. And then I remembered. A single, fleeting phone call with my mother weeks before the twins were born. I had been excited, letting the names slip out. My mother must have told her. In an act of misplaced compassion, trying to make Clara feel included, my mother had handed her the final, critical piece of her delusion. She had given her my baby's names. We have a bolo out for her and her vehicle, Miller continued. We found receipts in her apartment. For baby formula, car seats to taser. We believe her intent was imminent. Imminent. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The 9 months of looking over my shoulder, of jumping at shadows, hadn't been paranoia. It had been instinct. My body had known, on a primal level, that the hunt was not over. We left the storage facility and drove home in absolute silence, the world outside the car windows seeming alien and distant. When we got home, I went straight to the nursery, the real nursery. It was filled with light and warmth, the scent of baby powder and milk. My children were sleeping peacefully in their cribs, their tiny chests rising and falling in a steady, life-affirming rhythm. I stood between their cribs, my hands resting on the rails, just watching them breathe. The love I felt was so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. But it was no longer pure. It was now permanently intertwined with the image of that cold, concrete room and my children's names painted on the wall. A monument to a love that had twisted into a monstrous, unrecognizable thing. Later that night, the police found Clara. She was parked in an unmarked van at the end of our street, just outside the 100-yard perimeter of the restraining order. She was just watching the house. When they approached her, she didn't resist. She was in the driver's seat, humming a lullaby, the 2 brand-new car seats strapped in behind her, empty and waiting. They say she's in a secure facility now. They say she's getting the help she has needed for a very long time. My parents called, weeping, apologizing, their denial finally shattered by the irrefutable, painted proof of their daughter's broken mind. I listened, but I felt nothing. The space where my sister used to be is now just a scar. Tonight, Liam is asleep beside me, exhausted. But I am awake. I'm sitting in the rocking chair in my nursery, the real one. I watch Noah and Chloe on the baby monitor, their ghostly black and white forms stirring in their sleep. I love them more than life itself. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that the door to this room will never again be unlocked without a tremor of fear in my hand. My sister may be gone, but the ghost of that nursery, of a love so broken it tried to steal my life, will live here with us forever. I tell the stories that linger long after you've finished reading. If this one has its hooks in you, hit the like button. Let me know it found its mark in the comments. And subscribe, because the most chilling tales are yet to be told. You'll want to be here for them.